Phoenix Rising by Michael Anastas. As the sun went down, Sanctum Cage boarded the stage in the center of the Melbourne. Every passenger and the entire crew crowded around the stage and against the two balconies which overlooked the stage. Misty and I watched from the first balcony as Raichu, one of the lead singers, fastened his guitar around his waist. "Isn't this cute?" said Misty in a dreamy voice. "Almost as cute as Togepi used to be." I looked at her skeptically. "You've never heard anything by Sanctum Cage, have you?" "This'll be my first time." Raichu lowered the mic down to his height.
"Ladies and gentlemen," he spoke, "of the class and crew of the JC Melbourne, I thank you for coming on this fine evening."
There was short applause.
"And now, we'd like to dedicate this first song,"
he pointed to a man in the audience, completely picked out at random,
"to that guy right there."
There was a little laughter amongst the fans as Raichu plucked the first notes of the song I had spent half my life trying to teach them. "Oh, this isn't so bad," said Misty with a smile. "It's actually kind of nice." And then they broke out into the song Insomnia, originally performed by an American group called Megadeth. Misty ran to the back of the room, clutching her ears, shouting, "Turn it down!" By the time Misty had adjusted to the volume, I had managed to disappear into the crowd, completely intentionally.
"It's been a great night,"
shouted Raichu into the mic.
"And it's far from over. But right now, we have a special request from the loyalist of all our many fans, and to him, we sing this song."
The song was I'll Be There For You, also originally performed by Megadeth. Faith stood on stage left, and at the exact right time, I plugged in my microphone and stepped out onto the stage.
"And here's the loyal fan now!"
shouted Raichu. I knew the lyrics which Raichu had assigned, specifically so I could fulfill Faith's request. Faith looked like she was ready to drop dead when I got down on my knees and sang to her. "When you were with me, you were there. Always," I sang, while Faith turned stone. I got up from my knees and took her hands, paused, in my hands, and continued. "Now it's time for me to be there for you too. Always." We smiled at each other. "Always." I went to take a step away from her so I could sing with force. "You saw me slide, you saw me fall. We kept our pride through it all. When skies are dark, no sun shines through. I'll be there for you."
Mike Anastas, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Anastas!
Midway through the performance, a little after I had successfully completed Faith's request, Ash met up with Merlin in his cabin. A metal case rested in his lap. He presumed it to be full of ammunition or high-tech weapons. Merlin looked up from his trance as Ash entered. "The excitement wasn't good enough for you?" asked Merlin. Ash plopped down on the bed across from Merlin. "We're already saving the world. That's enough excitement for me." One more day and we'll be there." Ash looked up at Merlin. "You worried?" "Sort of. I mean, we all know what the Wraiths have already thrown at us. Countless attacks from Gary and Team Rocket, some of which we didn't live through. Well, now we're on the offensive line. One day, and we'll be in their very lair." Ash sat up. "That doesn't sound like you. After everything you've been through, you're actually starting to doubt your own strength? You're not afraid, are you?" "I'm always afraid." Ash was silent. "But that's okay. Fear is just an everyday element of life. Fear is what keeps us from breaking the law. Fear is what keeps us from risking our lives." He bowed his head again. "And fear is what keeps 90% of the world from wanting anything to do with me. The other 10 are punk trainers who think they're the bomb just because they have Pokemon." Ash reclined on the bed. "Just like Gary." Merlin set the case aside on the other bed. "Ash, you've been through a lot. But tell me, does this worry you at all?" "You're asking me about the stress?" Ash sat up. "I used to worry all the time. Then I met you. Merlin, don't you remember what you said to me? August 27th, 2 years ago?" Merlin shrugged. "I say a lot, but I don't remember it." Ash repeated Merlin's quote. "Save the future for the future and focus on what is." Merlin was silent for a moment. "Actually, I think it was Andrew who said that to me, but you're quite right." He hefted the case off the bed. "Well, this is what it is." "Excuse me?" Merlin held the case before Ash. Ash, you now know telepathy to the fullest that I can teach you. I was going to save this for after we take care of the refinery, but oh hell, you'll understand. Ash accepted the case, completely confused until he opened it. There, resting on the red velvet, was an exact replica of Merlin's sword, cut down to the finest detail. The evolution gemstone glistened in the fluorescent light which hovered above him. I can't. You'll need it, argued Merlin. Just remember everything I've taught you. You now have a clean blade. Just make sure you don't lose hold of it. They are near. We are well aware of that. Well, what is all this? We are fed up with taking orders from you. Your power is ours, do not forget. But the plan is still set, is it not? Kill Ash and Merlin. As I said before, we are fed up with taking orders from you. In fact, some of us brought up the idea of killing you at the same time. But you can't! I'm your minion! But you act like our commander. Silence. Since we do not know what to do with you or Ash or Merlin, we figured we'd make a little game out of this. One inside the one you're already playing? Indeed, and you shall be part of it. Brock caught Ash performing a Bushido dance in the bedroom with his new sword. He informed Misty, his roommate, and they both shook with a little fear. I could hear them whining about it as Faith and I walked down the corridor to our room. Now you know you were an insane fool for doing what you did, right? Asked Faith as I fumbled with the key to the cabin. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't. Faith smiled. Just checking. The knob turned and the door creaked open. Darius, my roommate, had already called it a night. Are you sure we won't wake him? You're worried about waking him? Faith smiled innocently. I'm not going in the Pokeball. Faith tried to snap her paws twice, failed, and sat down on the side of the bed. Oh well, that's what the blast shield is for. She picked up a remote which I had neglected noticing, pressed a button, and a gray wall of plastic shot up a few inches away from my face, soundproofing the room. And now, nobody can hear us, not even Darius. She grinned at me as I rolled my eyes, and sat down beside her. So the fact that I got down on my knees and sang a love song to you in front of a few thousand people wasn't enough for you. Faith smiled and leaned up against my shoulder. Your voice sounds so much better in solo. I got the message and placed my arm around her shoulder. Is that what you want? I'd like it. Faith smiled and closed her eyes. I was still a little worried, mainly thinking that the soundproof material was not entirely soundproof, but I still fulfilled Faith's request. It was a song that she'd first heard 2 years ago on a road trip while we were flipping through the stations. She'd heard it many times before, yet we still failed to find out who it was by. It was her favorite song, and she had fallen asleep just as I was finishing the last 2 stanzas. I gently lifted her off my shoulder and lowered her down to the pillow. It's hard for me to write this right now, especially with her looking over my shoulder as I do it. But at that moment, Faith meant the world to me. Call me deranged or insane, but Faith is the only living being who has been by my side since we first met. We've gone through almost all of each other's pain and joy together. Faith gives me something to believe in. From the day I first met her, she was my only reason for living. Faith meant the world to me, and she still does today. Faith wishes for whoever is reading this now to know that she was deeply touched when I wrote these words, and so states that my heart is the size of my head. I sat down beside her, admiring her beauty, which fit her personality with absolute perfection, and at that moment, I decided that she was more human than Pokemon. Joy swelled within me, but I soon found out how short-lived it was, for the black clouds were rolling forward across the night sky.